Picture this. It's a Friday night and you find yourself alone, by choice. While others are out mingling at crowded parties or posting selfies with friends, you're at home immersed in a book or lost in thought. You should feel lonely, right? Yet, in this quiet moment, you feel a strange peace. Still, a nagging doubt lingers. Is it okay that I don't care about having a social life? What does it mean about me? Society often tells us that humans are social animals, that happiness is found in friendships, parties, and belonging to groups. If you're indifferent to these things, you might worry something's wrong with you. You might even expend tremendous energy trying to appear normal and sociable when it doesn't come naturally. In fact, the philosopher Albert Camus observed that nobody realizes that some people expend tremendous energy merely to be normal. For some, acting interested in small talk or weekend outings can feel like an uphill battle, a performance done just to fit in. It's exhausting, and it can make you feel even more isolated. But what if your indifference to social life isn't a flaw at all, but the beginning of a deeper journey? Camus, a leading voice in existential philosophy, believed that stepping back from superficial social conventions can lead to profound self-discovery. When you're not busy keeping up with the crowd, you have the freedom to ask big questions. Who am I? What truly gives my life meaning? These are the questions we'll explore together, guided by the wisdom of Camus and other great thinkers who understood the value of solitude. A solitary figure walks in a vast desert, illustrating the experience of being alone with oneself. In these quiet, empty spaces, we often confront the core of who we are. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche recognized that individuals have always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. Solitude can feel like a desert, expansive, daunting, but also freeing, where the noise of others fades and your inner voice grows clearer. If you've ever felt like an outsider, you're in good company. Albert Camus' famous character, Meursault, in The Stranger, is a classic example of a person detached from social norms. Meursault doesn't cry at his mother's funeral, doesn't pretend to have emotions he doesn't feel, and is largely indifferent to the expectations of society. For this honesty, society judges him harshly, branding him cold, even monstrous. Camus uses Meursault to ask, must we fake interest in social rituals to be considered normal? Or can we find contentment on our own terms? Camus firmly believed that being true to oneself was more important than pleasing others. He wrote, "To be happy, we must not be too concerned with others." This isn't an encouragement to be uncaring or selfish, but rather a reminder not to live by others' approval. Chasing acceptance from everyone around you can be a never-ending treadmill. You lose your freedom and, ironically, your joy. Camus suggests that happiness is an inside job. It blooms when you stop worrying so much about what others think and start listening to your own heart. If you genuinely don't crave a busy social life, why force it? As Camus might say, embrace that freedom. Don't feel guilty for valuing your own company. Of course, going against the grain can be uncomfortable. There might be moments you wonder if you're missing out, or when others question you. Why don't you come out more often? It takes quiet courage to say, that's just not my path. Camus and his contemporaries knew this courage well. They lived through tumultuous times and resisted herd mentalities. Choosing your own way, even if it means walking alone, is a subtle form of rebellion. Camus called it an act of defiance to remain true to oneself in a world that constantly pressures us to conform. Stepping outside the bubble of social life can give you a unique vantage point. You might start to see how strange some social customs are. Small talk, status games, peer pressure. From the outside, these can appear, well, absurd. Camus was an expert on absurdity. He defined the absurd as the conflict between our desire for meaning and order and the indifferent, chaotic nature of the world. Daily life is full of people following scripts, chasing success, trying to keep busy socially, often without stopping to ask why. When you don't particularly care about those scripts, you can feel the absurdity more directly. It's as if everyone else is in a play and you've stepped out of it, watching the performance from backstage. Confronting this absurd reality can be jarring. There might be a moment when you think, if I don't find meaning in the usual social milestones, like Friday night parties or networking chatter, where do I find it? Camus' answer was that we must create our own meaning in spite of life's absurdity. He famously said that the absurd is the essential concept and the first truth. In other words, it's honest to admit life doesn't come pre-packaged with meaning. But Camus didn't stop at despair, far from it. After acknowledging the absurd, we're free to rebel against it by living fully and authentically. The point is to live, he wrote, to really live on our terms. One of Camus' most powerful metaphors for this is the myth of Sisyphus. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus is condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to have it roll back down each time. A hopeless, pointless task, it would seem. But Camus reimagines Sisyphus as a quiet hero. In the essay The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus concludes that one must imagine Sisyphus happy. He argues that Sisyphus, in choosing to continue his task with dignity and defiance, finds a kind of contentment. He masters his fate by accepting it. The absurdity of his situation doesn't defeat him, it frees him to decide how to respond. A modern sculpture titled Sisyphus by artist George Andrick depicts an abstract boulder by the sea, symbolizing the eternal struggle of the mythical Sisyphus. In Camus' eyes, Sisyphus's endless task is not a tale of despair, but of resilience. The French philosopher imagines that Sisyphus, aware of his fate, chooses his attitude. Each time he walks back down the hill, he owns that moment. By embracing the absurdity of his labor, Sisyphus leaves the stage victorious in spirit. Camus invites us to see ourselves in Sisyphus. Even when life feels repetitive or devoid of obvious meaning, we can decide to press on with our eyes open and heads high, finding meaning in the very act of living and resisting despair. So, what does this mean for you, who doesn't care much for social life? It means you have an opportunity to approach life like Camus's Sisyphus. You can acknowledge that maybe there is no grand script, no default path you must follow. And in that revelation, there is freedom. Instead of searching for meaning in the places everyone else does, status, popularity, external validation, you can create your own meaning. Maybe it's through a creative pursuit, engaging with ideas, taking quiet walks in nature, or simply observing the gentle indifference of the world on your own terms. Camus wrote, "I opened myself to the gentle indifference of the world, and found that it echoed his own inner silence. By not caring about frivolous social concerns, you too can open yourself to life's deeper currents, the subtle joys and insights that busy socializers might miss." It's important here to distinguish solitude from loneliness. They might sound like the same thing, but they are vastly different in experience. Solitude is a chosen aloneness, a rich silence where you can hear your own thoughts. Loneliness is an imposed isolation, a pain of feeling cut off or misunderstood. The psychologist Carl Jung, who often dwelled in his own solitude, put it beautifully. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible. In other words, you can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely if you can't share your true self with them. Conversely, you can be alone, yet not feel lonely if you are at peace with yourself. If you don't care about a bustling social life, perhaps you've felt this. Maybe you've been at a gathering, struggling to connect, thinking about ideas or questions that others aren't even aware of. That feeling, that disconnect, is loneliness. And it stems not from the lack of people, but from a lack of mutual understanding. Jung discovered that often the people who know more, feel more, or see the world differently end up feeling lonely, simply because there are fewer folks who can truly understand them. If a man knows more than others, he becomes lonely, he noted. This isn't a boast, it's a poignant truth. Your indifference to common social life might actually spring from seeing through things that others take for granted. It can be a sign of an independent mind. Here's the empowering flip side. Solitude can be incredibly fruitful. Jung himself valued solitude as a time of healing and creativity. He retreated to a quiet lakeside tower he built in Bollingen, Switzerland, to ponder his dreams and work on his ideas, far from society's clamor. He once said, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living. Talking is often a torment for me, and I need many days of silence to recover from the futility of words." Not everyone experiences it that intensely, but it shows that for some, conversation can feel shallow compared to the depth of one's own thoughts. If this resonates with you, know that your solitude is not emptiness. It is a wellspring for growth. In the quiet, you can confront your fears, explore your passions, and gradually build a solid sense of self. Jung's whole concept of individuation, becoming the person you are meant to be, requires some degree of solitude and self-reflection. It's in those alone moments that you integrate your experiences and truly come to understand yourself. Let's address a common inner conflict you might recognize. Part of you chooses to be alone, yet another part feels guilty or worried about it. You might think, am I weird for preferring to stay in? Everyone else seems to have a busy social life. Am I the only one who doesn't need that? Will I regret missing out on parties or networking someday? These thoughts are normal. We live in a culture that often equates happiness with how many friends you have or how often you go out. But quantity of social activity is not the same as quality of connection or contentment. Jung would encourage you to examine whose voice that is in your head asking these questions. Is it truly your desire or an internalized social expectation? If deep down you feel at ease and content spending Saturday night in solitude, trust that. If now and then you do crave connection, that's okay too. You can seek it in ways that are meaningful to you, a one-on-one deep conversation or an activity with a purpose rather than loud group gatherings. There is no one-size-fits-all life. As Jung and others teach us, what matters is becoming whole, becoming yourself, whether that looks conventionally social or not. A big concern for many who pull away from social life is the search for meaning. Humans are meaning-making creatures, as psychologists like Viktor Frankl emphasized. Frankl, a survivor of Auschwitz, founded logotherapy, a therapy centered on finding meaning in life, precisely because he observed that meaning was the difference between giving up and carrying on, even in the worst circumstances. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose, Frankl wrote. Think about that. It wasn't the horrific circumstances alone that broke people's spirit, but the feeling of meaninglessness. Conversely, even a quiet, unconventional life can feel full and unburdened if you have a sense of purpose driving you. So, if you're not deriving meaning from the usual social milestones, like making a ton of friends or going to events, it becomes vital to cultivate meaning elsewhere. The beautiful truth is, meaning is everywhere, ready to be found or created. Frankl observed people in concentration camps finding meaning by helping each other, holding on to memories of loved ones, or imagining future goals. In much easier circumstances, you have a wide canvas for meaning. It could be creative work, writing, art, music that expresses your inner world, intellectual pursuits, learning, studying philosophy or science or any field that fascinates you, spiritual practice, or acts of kindness. Perhaps you connect with others not through parties, but by volunteering or simply being a good friend to a select few. These are just examples. Meaning is deeply personal. The key is that it resonates with you. Nietzsche, another giant of philosophy, famously stated, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." This quote was so powerful that Frankl himself quoted it in Man's Search for Meaning. Your why is your reason for being, and it doesn't have to be something society hands to you. In fact, the most profound whys are the ones we discover within. If your why right now is unclear, solitude is the perfect time to explore it. Try asking yourself, what truly matters to me? What sparks a light inside me? You might have to peel back layers of others' expectations to hear the answer. Maybe you recall how you used to love drawing as a child. That pure creative joy could be a clue to your why. Or maybe you feel strongly about justice, nature, or understanding the universe. In solitude, you have the space to follow those threads of meaning without distraction. It's worth noting that not caring about social life can itself be meaningful when viewed through the lens of authenticity. Rather than filling your days with activities that feel shallow to you, you're choosing integrity, living in alignment with your true feelings. That is a form of meaning, the meaning of being honest with yourself. In a world where so many do things just to fit in, your refusal to do so, politely and without disdain for others, is a quiet declaration of freedom. Camus wrote, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion." This idea resonates here. By not needing the constant validation of the crowd, you are living that freedom. However, freedom can sometimes feel like being adrift. That's why pairing freedom with purpose is powerful. Frankl's insights come back into play. Ask not what you should do to seem normal, but what life is asking of you personally. Frankl suggested we imagine that life is questioning us, and our task is to answer with our actions. If you feel disconnected from social norms, perhaps life is asking you to pioneer a different way of living, to be a thinker, a creator, a compassionate observer who later shares wisdom with others. Many great novelists, scientists, and sages led somewhat solitary lives, channeling the energy they might have spent on casual socializing into their work or calling. This isn't to say you must achieve something earth-shattering to have worth. Not at all. It's to highlight that your inner-driven projects or passions can give your life richness, independent of how many dinner invitations you get. Consider a hypothetical. There's a person who attends gatherings every other night, has hundreds of acquaintances, and posts on social media constantly. And there's you, with maybe a friend or two you trust deeply, and a lot of time spent alone exploring your interests. Who is happier? Who is living more meaningfully? It all depends on whether their actions align with their values. If that social butterfly genuinely loves it, wonderful. But many people engage in social life due to fear of missing out or fear of being alone, not genuine joy. Their smiles might hide insecurity or emptiness. On the other hand, if you spend an evening alone reading something that opens your mind or taking a night walk that calms your soul, you might end that day feeling content and enough. Frankl would nod in approval because you've attended to your inner need for meaning or peace, rather than just following the herd. In the end, when you don't care about social life, you are not sentencing yourself to misery. You are inviting yourself to depth. It's as if life handed you a slightly different script, one that leads inward and onward, rather than outward for approval. Embracing solitude can be challenging at times, yes, but it can also be profoundly empowering. You learn that you are sufficient company for yourself. You start to enjoy the clarity of your own thoughts, the freedom to be real without performing. You become like an adventurer of the inner world, charting the landscapes of your mind and heart, where others might never take the time to go. It's important to acknowledge that humans are social creatures to a degree. Even the most introverted among us need some connection. But you get to choose quality over quantity. A few close relationships, or even just one, where you can be your authentic self, are far more fulfilling than dozens of surface-level connections. And interestingly, the more you know yourself through solitude, the more authentic your connections with others can become. You might find that when you do socialize, you attract kindred spirits, people who appreciate you because of your unique perspective, not in spite of it. Your very comfort with solitude can make you a better friend or partner when the time comes, because you bring a whole, reflective self to the table, rather than looking for others to fill a void. As a final reflection, let's return to Albert Camus and glean one of his gentle pieces of advice. In his private notebooks, Camus wrote a note to himself, which feels like it was meant for all of us who wonder about our place in the social world. Find meaning. Distinguish melancholy from sadness. Go out for a walk. Do not be afraid of spending quality time by yourself. Find meaning, or don't find meaning but steal some time, and give it freely and exclusively to your own self. Opt for privacy and solitude. That doesn't make you antisocial or cause you to reject the rest of the world. But you need to breathe, and you need to be. Let that sink in. You need to be, not to perform, not to impress, just to be. Camus is assuring us that choosing solitude is healthy, even necessary, for an authentic life. It's not a rejection of the world. It's a way to renew yourself so you can re-enter the world more whole. In your solitary hours, you may sometimes feel a chill of doubt, like a winter of the soul. But within you, there is also an invincible summer waiting to be discovered. Camus wrote, "In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer." Despite the cold exterior of isolation or the harsh judgments of society, inside you is a resilient warmth, a core of meaning, creativity, love, or joy that persists. Every experience of solitude, every thought you nurture, is like tending a hearth that will keep you warm when life gets cold. So when you don't care about social life, consider it not an absence, but an opening. You are free to define your own values, to seek truth, to create beauty, to develop compassion on your own terms. You can reconnect with nature, as many solitary souls do, feeling the profound sense of belonging that comes not from a crowd, but from being part of the wider universe. You can watch the stars and feel, like Camus, a brotherhood with the gentle indifference of the world, and find that strangely comforting. You can be friend and philosopher to yourself. In this journey, you'll likely discover that solitude is not a dead space, but a living garden. Tend to it, and you will grow. And whenever you do step back into the social sphere, You can do so as someone who knows who they are and what life means to them. That authenticity will guide you to the right connections, people who appreciate the real you, or endeavors that truly fulfill you. Embrace your solitude. It is a gift. In the silence, listen for that small, steady voice that has been with you all along. It may tell you things the noise of the world never could. And as you heed it, you may find, to your own gentle surprise, that you've been walking toward a meaningful life this whole time. A life that is truly yours, rich with inner freedom and an invincible summer that no winter can take away. Truly yours, a fellow traveler in this quiet, wondrous journey of self-discovery.